Welcome to the second tutorial in this series on using MultilingProfiler. In this video, you'll learn how to profile texts using data about word frequency. In other words, how often words appear in a language. We'll look at how to interpret the core statistic known as coverage, and how to make small adjustments to your texts to make them more accessible for learners if needed. In this demo, I'll be profiling a Spanish text from lingua.com, aimed at CEFR A2 or low intermediate learners. But you can use MultilingProfiler to analyze any kind of text you like, including something you've written yourself, with or without the help of AI. To get started, copy the text and paste it directly into the profiling window. The idea behind frequency is that the more common a word is in the language, the more likely learners are to know it, because they'll have seen it lots of times in many different contexts. MultilingProfiler lets you adjust the frequency threshold by choosing bands of 1,000 words, ranked by how often they appear in that language. Roughly speaking, the first band, which contains the 1,000 most frequent words, is associated with the knowledge of beginner or A1 level learners. The 2,000 band is associated with post-beginners or A2 level learners, the 3,000 band with low intermediate or B1 level learners, and the bands beyond that with upper intermediate and advanced level learners. Since this text is written for A2, let's select the 2,000 band and see how well the vocabulary fits that target group. As soon as you run the profiler, you'll get what's called a coverage result. Here, that's 92.3%. This is the global coverage, which tells us the percentage of words in the text that appear on the selected word list, so in this case, the 2,000 most frequent words in Spanish. Words that aren't included on the list, and so aren't included in the coverage figure, are shown in orange. So what does that number tell us about how accessible this text is for learners? Well, that really depends on how you're planning to use it. For minimum comprehension, so just getting the gist of the text, research suggests that learners typically need to understand at least 90% of words. So, this text would probably work as is for a general reading task. However, for deeper understanding, or to help learners guess unfamiliar words from context, between 95 and 98% coverage is generally recommended, especially for less experienced learners. So, at A2, this text might benefit from a few adjustments to bring it closer to that range. You could do this by adding glosses, or by actually editing the text to replace less frequent words with more common alternatives. For example, if the text contains specific terms like patos and cisnes, ducks and swans, you could swap them for a more general term like pájaros, birds. You might also replace less frequent words with more common equivalents. For example, pequeñas problemas, minor problems, instead of pequeñas incomodidades, minor inconveniences. Instead of se libran de ir al colegio, they get out of going to school, you could say no tienen que ir, they don't have to go. And if you find a low frequency word isn't adding much meaning to the text, you could simply remove it. For example, by changing tienda de ultramarinos, a grocery store, to just tienda, shop. You might also decide that a word like frecuente is guessable if it's similar to a word in the learner's first language, like frequent in English. If that's the case, you can include it in the profile using the Add to List button. There's more detail about that feature and other ways to customize your list in Tutorial 8. Now let's see what happens when we rerun the profile with those edits. You can see that all of the new words and phrases, pájaros, problemas, and no tienen que, all fall within the top 2,000 words, and the updated coverage is now 96.4%. That makes it much more likely that learners will understand the whole text and be able to infer the remaining words, lago, desplazarse, nadando, and nieve, from the context. To learn more about the research behind the coverage approach, like how many words learners typically need to know to understand a written text or audio, and which kinds of word lists best support comprehension and exam preparation, you can find short, accessible summaries linked below this video, all published on the OASIS database. In the next tutorial, we'll take a closer look at the frequency lists behind these profiles and learn how to search and browse them. Alternatively, if you'd prefer to go through these basics again, using a German text and a word list created for the GCSE exam in England, feel free to jump ahead to tutorial 6.